Hi, I'm David. In this complete overview video for Scalar EQ, I just want to have a look firstly at the features and just quickly run you through the UX and what Scalar EQ can do before I play any music. And then we'll look at some audio examples, some guitar, some drums, etc., just to have a look at how they work in situ. Okay, so this is the user interface for Scalar EQ. So we've got nodes, and you can select the nodes either by clicking on the nodes themselves or clicking on the node buttons up the top here. You can just grab nodes and cut and boost as you ordinarily would. You can turn nodes off. You can command click, or you can just double click to reset. You can change the window width of each node, and you can also change the window queue, so you can kind of create different shapes. And you can see that by boosting, the natural behavior is you're boosting frequencies in key, because we're in A minor, C major, and you can cut frequencies that are out of key. You can change that behavior. So say, for example, I turn in scale off and flip harmonics off. Then what we're seeing is out of key frequencies. And because flip harmonics is off, it's not going to flip them as it ordinarily does. It's going to remove them. So it's a really good way of finding out of key frequencies. You've got a reset button here. That'll reset back to the scale that you're currently in. You've got these transpose buttons as well, which are really cool. So you can transpose up and down to different keys, and you can choose a bunch of scales and modes from within this section. There's also a dynamic compressor and expander. So you can turn dynamics on and off, and then you can apply different parameters to each of those compressors. We'll look at those in an example later on. You've also got these, very importantly, you've got these filter shapes. So you've got your traditional low cut, low shelf, and high shelf. But at the moment we're using a harmonic peak. Let's say I reset that and click harmonic peak plus minus. That'll simultaneously boost and cut in key and out of key frequencies. You've got high shelves, which we've talked about. Magic high shelves, very different to standard EQ high shelves in that they treat the mid and side differently. We've got an imaging section where you can enhance the stereo image, and you can mono it too, which is really, really cool. So you've got total flexibility there. And you can mono everything under a certain frequency too. You've got a reset button. And here we've got our preset selector, pretty straightforward, all in categories. You've got a bunch of great presets. We'll go through some of those later, and you can easily favorite something too. So let's say you can, you like your bass guitar, you favorite it and it appears in favorites. If you save, you just click the save button and it'll appear here in your user preset too. To detect a key, it's pretty simple. You just hit detect, play it some audio, click stop, it'll flash up to tell you it's got a result. Global mode is on by default. That means any change that you make with the transpose buttons or selecting a scale will apply to all the nodes. But if you were to turn global off, you can actually change and have different keys per nodes. That's really important because we've got a really cool feature where you can deselect specific notes. To make this a little bit more obvious, let me just reset this and let's go to, we're in the same A minor, C major. They're obviously the same, but just so we can see it clearly, let's go to C major. So let's say we're boosting up. We've got a really wide window width, and we've got a high Q. So right now we're spanning across 5 octaves. Let's say we make it 3 octaves. And now we can either transpose up and down. What's really cool about transposing, it's an easy way to choose a different key, but you can see that this area will remain true. It's not going to move the note up and down. It's just going to actually move the notes within the node. That is really, really cool. So if I was to come back to C major, I can say, oh, don't boost the major second or the major third, just leave the root, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and don't worry about the major sixth and seventh. And then you've got this whole shape. You can move it up and down, obviously, and then you can also transpose to a different key here. So you've got total flexibility. Global off, it's different for every one. So this one's got all the keys, the notes selected. You can change notes per node. So if I turn global back on and reset, it just resets it back to the A minor, C major, but it's keeping the individual note selections for each node. If I want to change that behavior, I can come into keep current scale, which is keeping the current scale and note selection. I can turn it off, and now when I reset, it's not going to keep the current scale. It's going to go back to its default of A minor, C major. Looking in the settings menu, you can display notes as sharps or flats. That's pretty obvious in the display here or in the note selector here. You can have your spectrum analyzer pre-post or pre and post, and we've got a smart mode. So it's very normal to have post filter decay, particularly if you're notching out loads of notches in the bottom end. That minimizes it. We'd like to keep it off by default for the sake of some filter accuracy. You can change the default size of your GUI and we'll talk about more of the applications of Keep Current Scale. And you've got your About menu to go to where you register and find out info about it. You've got tooltips as well, so you can turn your tooltips on and off, and you've got your bypass button up here. You can use it as a traditional EQ or as a harmonic EQ or both. So if you come to the filter shapes, you could just choose a peak filter, normal peak filter. Now you're just looking like a very typical EQ. You can change the range, you can change the gain up and down here, and you can also change the stereo imaging too, or where it appears in the mid or the sides, which is really, really cool. So you can do that across a range of nodes. You can have this appear in the sides, this appear in the mids, and so forth. Okay, let's start having a look at some of the features and how they work whilst actually working with some music. Okay, so let's have a look at some guitars. Here I've got an acoustic guitar loop. So if I just quickly look through some of the presets, let's go to guitar and let's check out acoustic guitar bright and wide. Acoustic guitar shimmer. Yeah, it's brought out really nicely. Let's try acoustic guitar sparkle. And what I might do is just bring up the stereo width and mono everything under 100 Hertz there, or even 200 Hertz. Yeah, really nice, kind of brings out all that musicality. Let's try acoustic guitar warm 70s vibe. And so obviously that's taking out a lot of the tops and the bottoms, and it's enhancing the musicality around the mid. If I change this node, select node 4, and I'll go to a harmonic plus minus, and what that does is it boosts the in key and removes the out of key frequencies at the same time. Yeah, that's really nice. It's kind of taken out that the real ring around the mid-range. And what I might do to bring it up a little bit is I might actually change, instead of high cutting the top, I might actually turn it into a magic shelf and boost the top just to reintroduce some of that top. Okay, let's have a look at electric guitar. So here's a loop. So we've got a bunch of electric guitar presets. And here's a way I like to use scalar EQ, in that I find a preset. Either I'll start from scratch, which is pretty easy to do, but let's say I find a preset. This particular guitar loop has a bass in it as well. So the bass boost is kind of a bit too strong. So let's do a couple of things. Let's bring that down, bring that magic shelf down. Let's bring the tops up, and let's take some of the inharmonic frequencies out of that top. Just kind of boost the range. We can adjust the window width of that to notch out quite a few of those frequencies. Let's bring up node 4 here, and let's actually put this one in the side, not the mid, but the sides only. And for node 3, what I might do is I might do a plus minus and really bring it up. And you can decide how much of that musicality you want in. Okay, let's check it out. Okay, so let's have a look at treating drums. And in this example, I want to show how you can work with the musicality, the music and the drum separately, and use scalar EQ on both. So I've got two loops going on here. I've got an acoustic drum kit playing along. Great drummer here from Australia, Ben Crook. And then I've got some music I've written for that. And together they sound like this. So if we look at the drums, obviously we can go straight into the drum preset folder, I'll choose Acoustic Drum Vitalizer. And that's not scale based, which is really nice because you can see there it's not using any harmonic filters, and you can hear it just if I put it straight in with the music, how it just really does bring it out. Now, what's really cool about Scalar is I can pull up a harmonic peak filter here, and you can actually bring in the musicality of drums. The tune's in A minor, as you can see, or you can take it out. So if we were to bring it in, for example, let me just widen that window a little bit so we can make it more musical. Or I can do the opposite. I can actually take it out. I can really move that range to really take out all those inharmonic notes. So here we go. Now, if I go to the music part and put Scalar on it, what I can do is I can do the opposite. I can, let's say I bring up some of the shelf and pull up the stereo width a little bit to start. Now I want to bring in the musicality from the music loop. So let's say I spread that window width a little bit. And now as I've taken it out of the drums, as you can see from this EQ here on the drums, I've actually got that room to play with here. And what's really cool is you can automate this in your DAW, and you can do some really nice sweeps within the music to act like a resonator. It's really cool what you can do with scalar EQ and drums. If I was just to solo this, the drum track, I'm going to reset it, and I'm going to make sure keep current scale is set to off. Now it's on by default, which means everything adapts, but by setting it to off, it'll load the preset with the information that it was saved with. And that's really good for these ones that starts with, for example, 135, because they're saying I'm only going to play 135. So I can use it as a resonator. And that's really cool because what I'm doing is I'm bringing out the A and the E, for example, the 1 and 5. Here I'm bringing out the 5th and the minor 7th, and there I'm doing the same, and I'm doing it dynamically. So you can automate switching between presets, and it's really cool. And there's so many really good resonator effects. I'm using it on drums. Obviously, it works on sound design too. And we've even got this very cool fake pad, which does exactly that. Makes a kind of pad out of anything, but in this case, drums. And that works with the music too. So if I was to bring back the music and do this on the drums. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really cool way to use scalar EQ just as a traditional EQ, or as a musical EQ, or as an effect EQ. Scalar EQ is really good for vocals too. Obviously, you can do the usual thing and you can boost up your high shelf and you can add a little bit of stereo width. But here I've got a vocal written in a tune in F minor. So straight away with these two things. Yeah, you can see the magic shelf works really nicely without boosting up the harsh stuff. But let's find the harsh stuff. Let's boost up some frequencies. Let's turn in scale off and flip harmonics off. So now we're hearing the out of key frequencies, notes that aren't in F minor. It's a really good way to, in this case, just soothe that vocal a little bit if you like. If I kind of widen the range a little bit and I widen the whole window to 2.5 octaves and I really narrow down that window cue so I can hear the notes all fully. Let's find the yucky stuff.
No need for the light to break, 'cause I see.
Now, normally when you're doing that with EQ, you don't know whether it's in scale or out of scale, so you could actually be pulling out important notes. Here, all these notes are not important, so let's just pull them out.
No need for that light to break.
And that will instantly give us a much cleaner sound. Let's have a listen with it off.
No need for that light to break.
And on.
'Cause I see in front of me.
And you can do all kinds of things. So let's turn, rather than a low shelf, which we could use, or a low cut, if I was to turn this into a harmonic peak and really bring it down, widen the range, and yeah, let's make the window width quite wide. Now, if I bring it all the way down, it can act like a low cut, except it's only taking out frequencies out of key.
No need for that light.
Conversely, I could just say I wanted to add some presence rather than a traditional peak, which I could do here. If I go to the harmonic peak, it's only really adding the notes that are in frequency. So you can see the vocals cleaned up quite a lot without it and with it.
No need for that light to break. 'Cause I see in front of me. Those stars will illuminate.
Okay, so here I've got a music bus, which has got some pianos and keys a little later on. So the first thing I want to do is, to use scalar EQ, I want to detect the actual bus and see what key and scale it's in. Okay, great. So it's got it as F sharp major, which is right. Now, one of the really cool things about using scalar is if you actually have a look at where the notes are landing, I don't necessarily want to take out those frequencies. That's what a traditional EQ does, and that's where scalar is different. And if I was to notch up, you can see that it's actually notching in the right key because it's boosting the in-key harmonic. So it's actually, you can see it. The notes that I'm playing correlate with the notes that scalar EQ is boosting up. But I don't want to take those out. I want to get rid of that. There's some belly tones there. So I want to turn in scale off and flip harmonics off. And now they're actually, the actual individual filters are dancing around those keys. That is throwing up the stuff that's not in key. Let's have a listen. Yeah, you can hear it right at the start there. Yeah, so I want to take that stuff out. So here we go. That's good, and that's bringing out that real musicality. Whilst I'm doing that, I can also start to bring in some of the actual in-key frequencies up the higher end. Bring a shelf in, give it some bottom, take out some low mid, pretty standard application. Boost up the stereo width a little bit. Mono under a certain frequency. Let's have a listen to it off and on. Yeah, really cool. And you'll hear that if I was to move the track up to the next section, and now I bypass it. Another excellent application is to use scalar on effects buses. So here's the effects for that track. And you can hear with it just generally on top of the track. There's a lot of effects. So what I want to do is clean up the effects bus. So I can, straight away, I'm still in F major. And now what I can do is pretty obvious. I'm going to widen the width of that node. And I'm going to also fully bring down that Q. I'm going to use some magic shelves to subtly smoothen the tops and bottom, and I'm going to bring this range right down. So now if we hear that bass, and that makes that, still gives us that effect, that reverb, but much smoother method. Let's mute this. Remember, this is just on the effects bus. If I have it on, and then I'll turn it off. Yeah, it's a really nice way to clean up effects buses too. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to check out the 3-minute overview video that I've made. It covers scalar EQ in kind of more the traditional, using it on a master bus. I haven't covered that in this video, but do check that out. I encourage you to do so. Thanks very much and enjoy Scalar EQ.